Hi everybody. In the previous attributes video, we covered some of the basics of what attributes are and how they can be used. In this video, we'll do some other cool and useful things with them. A note to any GIS pros who might be watching this. I know these aren't advanced techniques for you. Please keep in mind that this video, like my designer's guide, is aimed mostly at graphic designers with no GIS experience. It's common for a dataset to contain more than you want for a particular project. The world map we created in the last lesson is a good example, so we'll start with that. Our cities shapefile has more cities than I want to show. They make the map really busy. I'd like to show only national capitals. How can I do that? I could manually delete all of the non-capitals, which is not my idea of fun, or I can filter the data to display only the capitals. Filtering the data lets us pull out only the things we want and exclude the rest. There are two ways to filter data. I'll show both of them here. You can use either one. Before we do that, though, we need to identify our attributes. The 4 steps I'm about to cover apply to both filtering methods. First, I'll right-click on the Cities layer and open the attribute table. We need to find 2 attributes, one that lists the cities and one to indicate the capitals. In the previous lesson, we identified that name is the attribute for city names. Looking through the table, there's an attribute called ADM0CAP. The entries for this attribute are either a 0 or a 1. If I compare the ones with the number 1 with the city names, it looks like the number 1 entries are the capital cities. To confirm this, I'll check several of the city names. It looks like a match. The cities with a 1 in the ADM0CAP field are all capitals. Finding the correct attributes is the hardest part of this process. A complicating factor is that not all data is created equally. You can find datasets that have a lot of extra attributes and others with very few. If a dataset doesn't have the attributes you may need to search for an alternative dataset. Now that we've identified the attributes we need, we can go ahead and filter the data to get just the capital cities. There are 2 ways to do this. Here's the first method. With the attribute table open, click on the little E at the top to open the expression editor. In the middle column, click on the little triangle next to Fields and Values to open it. We'll use this window to build an expression to filter our data. Scroll down the list until you see ADM0CAP and double-click on it. It will appear in the left column. Next, click on the equal sign below the first column. This will put an equal sign into the equation. Make sure you don't get 2 of them. Click on the All Unique button. This will show all of the possible values for the attribute you've specified in the first column, in this case 0 and 1. We want to show only the capital cities, which are the ones with a value of 1, so double-click on the 1 and you'll see it added to the expression in the first column. The complete expression should now be ADM0CAP equals 1. Click the Select Features button and close the expression editor window. If you scroll through the attribute table, you'll see all of the capital city entries are now selected. Now we'll save the selected entries into a new shapefile. Right-click on the layer in the Layers palette and go to Export, Save Selected Features As. The Save Selected Features As window appears. Set the format to ESRI shapefile, then click on the 3-dot button to save the file to your computer. Ignore the other settings and click OK. At first, your map won't look any different, except for the new layer added to the Layers palette. Turn off the old cities layer and you'll see just the capitals. Great, except the city labels no longer appear. This isn't surprising since this is a new layer and we haven't enabled labels for it yet. Double-click on the Capitals layer to open the Layer Properties window. Click on the Labels tab and select Name for the value, then click OK. Here's what we get. That's much better. Our map now shows only the capital cities and their labels. Plus, we now have a new shapefile that shows only world capitals. We can reuse this file for other projects so we don't have to repeat this procedure. The second way to filter data is the filter function. This is similar to the expression editor method. We're still creating an expression, but the steps are a bit different. In the Layers palette, turn the original cities layer back on and delete the capitals layer we just created. This returns the map to the way it was before. Right-click on the Cities layer and select Filter from the menu. The Filter window will appear. If it looks similar to the expression editor, it's because they are basically the same thing. In the left column, double-click on ADM0CAP to add it to the expression window, then click on the equal sign. Click on the All button and the 1 and 0 will appear. Double-click on the 1 to add it to the expression, then click OK. Here's what you'll see. That's very cool. The labels are still there. Instead of creating a new shapefile like the first method, this method shows only the data that meets the filter criteria. This gives you the option of restoring all of the data by removing the filter. Because of that, I usually use this method instead of the expression editor method, but either one will do the trick. If you want to create a new shapefile for the filtered data to reuse later or to share with someone, use the expression editor method. If you don't need to do that, use the filter method. One of the most common things I need to do with the dataset is to split the data based on some attribute or combination of attributes. In the filtering examples I just showed, we use two methods to pull a single set of data from a larger dataset. By splitting, I mean taking a single shapefile and splitting it into several shapefiles based on an attribute. If you're creating maps with roads, you'll probably need to do this so you can style the different classes of roads separately. In my experience, this is the most common reason for splitting a dataset, but it can be used for other things too. There are a lot of places to get road data. County and state GIS websites, state transportation departments, and the U.S. Census Bureau are just a few. There's a link in the description to download a roads file for this step, so download that now. Create a new project in QGIS and navigate to the Advanced Attributes folder. Open it and drag the centerline file onto the map canvas. This shows every road and street in the county, from interstates to neighborhood cul-de-sacs, and they all look the same. Unless you're creating a county-wide street map, you probably don't want to show every street. We need to separate this data into categories such as interstates, U.S. highways, state highways, and minor roads, so we can show only the roads we want. Separating the road data also lets us style the different types of roads differently. You probably don't want interstate highways to look the same as neighborhood streets. Note: some road datasets don't have the attributes needed for this procedure. If the first one you find doesn't, look for one that does. Road datasets from state transportation departments usually have the attributes you need. Let's take a deeper look at the data. Right-click on the layer and open the attribute table. Looking through it, I see a column called Road Class. It looks like the numbers for this attribute range from 0 to 6, so I'll take a guess that this attribute is the one I can use to separate the roads into different categories. How can I test my guess? Here's where things get a little more interesting. At the top of the attribute table is an icon that looks like a little E. Mouse over it and it will say Select Features using an expression. This is the same method we used in the first procedure. Click on this and a window will open. We can do a lot of complex things here, but what we'll be doing is pretty simple. Here are the steps. In the center column, click the little triangle next to Fields and Values. Scroll down until you see Road Class. Double-click on that and it will show up in the left column, then click the equal sign at the bottom of the first column. Your expression should look like this so far. In the third column, click on All Unique. This shows all of the possible values for this attribute. Now we'll test our theory. Double-click on the 1. Here's what the expression should look like. Click the Select Features button below the third column. And here's what we see. The roads that are now highlighted are the major highways. 2 are interstates and 1 is a U.S. highway. That confirms my guess about this attribute. Let's try another one to be sure. In the expression editor, I'll just change the 1 to a 2. And here's what we get. The selected roads are all North Carolina state highways. Now that we've confirmed this, we can separate this single shapefile into separate ones for each road category. See my roads video for more about road datasets. Here's some good news. The hardest part of this procedure, figuring out which attribute to use and what the values mean, is over. Sometimes when you download a dataset, especially roads, there is some additional information on the website that can help you understand the attribute table. Unfortunately, this rarely happens. You can often find help with Google. Search for something like GIS Road Classification Wyoming, for example. Here's a chart I found for New York. And here's one for New Hampshire. What these classifications have in common is that lower numbers correlate to major roads, while higher numbers correlate with minor roads. Some state DOT websites have downloadable PDFs that describe every attribute in the data file. Here's one for North Carolina. The procedure for splitting our data layer into separate shapefiles is easy. Here are the steps. Create a folder on your computer for the new shapefiles. Here I have a folder called New Roads. Make sure the layer is selected in the Layers palette and go to Vector, Data Management Tools, Split Vector Layer. The Split Vector Layer window will appear. Input layer should be the name of your existing roads layer, the one you're splitting. Unique ID field is the attribute you want to use to separate the data. For this example, set it to Road class. Click on Advanced Parameters and set the output file type to SHP for shapefile. For Output Directory, select Save to Directory and navigate to the folder you just created, then click OK. A note for Mac users. QGIS 3.2 for Mac has a small bug. Once you set the output directory, the Split Vector Layer window closes. Just open it again and continue. Click Run. The process will take a few seconds. When it's done, click Close. In the Browser panel, navigate to your new folder, and you'll see your new shapefiles. You can now delete or turn off the Centerlines layer and add the layers you want. Here I've added the Class 1 and 2 roads. You can use this same technique to filter your data in other ways. For example, if you have a roads shapefile for an entire state, you could separate it by county to get the parts you need. Just look for the attribute you need. Before you go crazy with this technique, make sure you're working smartly. You could take a map of the US and pull out a single county, but it makes more sense to find a dataset of just that county. If I can find the data I need without doing any filtering, that's usually preferable. Check out my designer's guide to creating great maps at themapguide.net/guide and download 2 free chapters. That's all for now. See you next time.